All right, welcome in. It's WCNC and WFMY weather impact alert tonight for all the Carolinas. We're doing something different tonight. As I'm out of breath, Tim, I was running to get something. So I feel like I'm out of breath because of all the stuff we had to do today. And it's only Wednesday. So a lot to talk about tonight. Yeah, a lot to talk about tonight, Tim. We've got a lot of weather, a lot of variables still ongoing, and we're going to take more of your questions tonight. So if you have questions, we'd love to answer them. I don't know about Tim, but I love this part of interacting with our audience because a lot of times there's things we're not thinking of that are really good questions, and we have the answers. We just take them for granted. So it's great to share that. And probably your question is a question about another 100 people have. So send those questions in. Yeah. We'd love to answer them. So Tim, I'll give you a chance to talk so I can catch my breath here. We had a lot of changes overnight. We saw some hints of this last night, but really now we've got 3 or 4 new runs of model data. Specifically, one model has seen some pretty dramatic changes as far as the type of wintry precip we're going to see.
It has, and we kind of joke about this in the newsroom sometimes when I'm helping our crews plan and our bosses plan and just logistics. I joke with them, we learn more every day, but it's true. There is something new that we learn about a storm each and every day as it gets a little bit closer, and sometimes it's helpful to kind of go through what's changed between where we were yesterday and where we might be now. I do think there are a couple of changes. Number one, it might be the speed of the system, maybe the timing of the system. And the system, to me, looks to be moving a little bit more slowly on the start time of it, at least. Probably not arriving until sometime Saturday afternoon into Saturday evening. And then as we go into the weekend, the other change would be that it's more primarily going to be sleet and freezing rain. And so the threat of icy types of precipitation, both types, is going up. And I think the threat of snow, or the pleasure, or the prospect of snow, is going down, unfortunately, for most of North Carolina. I have a lot of people asking me, Brad, are you saying it's not going to snow anymore? Probably there's still going to be some snow, at least in my area.
Yeah.
But I'll guarantee most snow lovers will be disappointed at this point. That's kind of the way it's looking to me. Still a few days out, but those are kind of the new trends that I've been seeing with this. It's slower, and the slower arrival, the later it gets here, the warmer it's already going to be above our heads, and that makes it less likely to get that snow at the beginning.
Yeah, it's kind of it's a good point about the speed. I think that's probably been underplayed. It does look slower, and that has ramifications, as you mentioned. I think it's really fascinating. The slower movement, as you mentioned, does increase what we call the warm nose, the warm air above our head. But it also, conversely, could allow for more low-level cold air to get in, which is kind of the perfect storm, if you will, for ice, which is what we're worried about right now. I'll show you my trends. Yeah. I put not as cold because it's weird, because I think at the surface it's marginally warmer. It's really above our heads, as you mentioned, Tim. It's that warm nose which is warmed up, and that's not where we live. We live down at the ground. Moisture, I'd say steady. It's not as crazy high as yesterday, but it's still significant QPF. But sleet and ice, and this is where the question arises. The difference between sleet and ice is pretty significant as far as impacts, but it's pretty minor meteorologically to have one versus the other, because it's just a tiny amount of difference. And I built this graphic a couple years ago, and I love it because it really kind of 3D-wise shows you what's going on. If you have a column of the atmosphere up to the cloud base, if you have snow, normally it's below freezing all the way to the ground. It doesn't have to be all the way to the ground. You can have a shallow warm layer, but typically pretty close to the ground, it's below 32. The warm nose, the reason we call it a warm nose, if we look at a profile sideways, it looks like a nose on a drawing. But what it is just a warm pocket of air, anywhere from 4,000 to 7,000 feet. When it's really shallow, the snowflakes melt briefly, but they're able to refreeze before they reach the ground. And you get the good old-fashioned, what we like to call sprinkles on a donut, right? They're sprinkles falling from the sky. It makes a lot of noise. When it's sleeting, you will hear it. You'll hear it against your windows. But when that warm layer gets a little bit thicker, it changes to freezing rain. And if that isn't one of the toughest things in meteorology, is figuring out how thick that warm layer is and how strong it is. So on a given day, Tim and I would probably just worry about the forecast at the ground. In a situation like this, we're worried about the temperature at the ground at 4,000, 5,000, 8,000. I mean, we've got like multiple temperatures that we're worrying about over vast areas of the Carolinas, and we're talking tenths of a degree difference is the difference between sleet and snow. So Tim, really kind of a difficult setup, but I think you and I are kind of in agreement. It's kind of going to be somewhere between that sleet and freezing rain line. The question is, how long do we spend on each side of that line, if you will?
It is always a a tough question to answer, right? And like you said, a huge impact between the difference between sleet and freezing rain. And usually the difference is how warm is that warm layer, how thick is that warm layer, but also how deep or how cold is that cold near the ground.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is some of these models are projecting Charlotte or Greensboro to be in the low 20s or even in the upper teens during this event. And that's significant chill. And so you might be able to refreeze some of those water droplets into sleet pellets before they hit the ground. I think especially Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, Sunday morning, that might be your prime time to do that. As the warm nose gets a little thicker, the warm air gets a little warmer, particularly around Charlotte and maybe up to my area as well, that's when you've got to worry about more of an icing event. And so I think the hardest thing, like you were saying, Brad, somebody in the Carolinas is going to get an ice storm.
Yeah.
And the difference between freezing rain or getting some ice and getting an ice storm, you know it when you see it. But basically, when trees are starting to fall from ice, I do think someone's going to get that. I don't really know just yet who that is. I'm not sure if you have an opinion on where that bullseye of icing is just yet. But I think that's going to be the hardest impact for us to forecast over the next couple of days.
Yeah, wherever that is, Tim, it's probably going to be a narrow corridor that stretches from somewhere in the western part of our states to the east. But where that is, it near Interstate 40 by you? Is it Interstate 85 between us? Is it the state line between North and South Carolina? I think that's my concern if it's right over the heart of our metro area because there's more infrastructure there and obviously more people. It's not that we don't care about the rural communities, but there's more stuff to break and cause damage, more power lines in the metro area that could be impacted. And that could actually stretch out to the rural areas because this is kind of the hub of the area. What I do find interesting, Tim, and I think this is your map looks a lot like mine, though I love that you broke the major ice threat and snow and sleet because I 100% agree with that map. Actually, I could have probably drawn that same thing.
Oh, good.
Because that's
I hadn't shown it to you today, so I was wondering.
Yeah, no, that's pretty much my thinking right now. If you were to like say, hey, Brad, I need a forecast that you're going to use for the next 3 days without looking at anything, I would have put this out right here because that is kind of the corridor, I think, the worst ice. And it kind of matches up with the blending of all the guidance that I look at. The one cool thing, and I want to ask you about this, Tim, and I don't know if you saw this, but yesterday we talked about the hurricane hunters were relocating from Hawaii to the West Coast. They're flying our system right now. Here's a look at the hurricane hunters. They flew out of, it doesn't look like San Francisco. It looks like maybe Oakland, just inland there. They flew out. And they're doing drop-sons, which are reverse weather balloons, and they're sampling the storm. And there's a real good chance a lot of this data will get into what we call the 0Z runs of the models tonight, which will be running within the next hour. They won't be out till probably closer to 10 or 11. But it'll be interesting, Tim, for a couple reasons, to see if the models shift. But I'm also curious to see if this validates one model over another that's been handling this low-pressure system better.
So just to underscore what you're showing us here is our system is still over the Pacific Ocean.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So that, to me, that's the headline. And I love that the hunters are in there. And they were in there yesterday, too, right? So that was cool stuff. The concerning thing, if you're a snow lover, is the idea of getting the hunters in there is to get more accurate data and try to help out the models. After that happened, the snow prospects have gone down. They haven't disappeared, but they really have gone down. And so that's been the trend, and you would buy into it a little more if we trust the data going into it a little bit more. So that's the bummer of it right now. But it is amazing how far away it is still. And I think just the uniqueness of this system that we were talking about yesterday and still holds true is the ceiling of how much frozen water is going to be falling in the Carolinas. With a winter storm, kind of for me, and I'm sure you do the same thing, I usually start with how much water do we have available and then break it down into all the little types. And to me, if you get over about 0.7 of an inch, like 0.75 or something, that's a big winter storm. for water availability. This sucker's going to have like 1.5 inches of QPF of water available. That's a lot. That's just a whole lot to have available to you. Now, a lot of that could fall as the sleet, or a lot of that could fall as the freezing rain. That's a big concern, and in fact, it's even more than that over by Tennessee. So the ceiling is really high, and a lot of people still asking me, wait, so is this thing going to miss us now? There's no missing.
Yeah,
there's zero chance of this.
Thank you,
missing
Tim.
us. Period.
Yeah.
There's also zero. I have people asking me in Danville and Greensboro, is there a chance this turns into a cold rain? There's a 0% chance it turns into a cold rain.
Yeah.
We are going to be 20 degrees with either freezing rain or sleet. This is locked in like winter impacts for us.
Yeah.
It's just not going to be the fun, and you can't play with your kids and have a snowman, and that's the real bummer of it all, unfortunately.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's a question I got a lot. And I think the reason that came, and I, at the time I was getting those questions last night, I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Like, who's saying this? I think what happened is a lot of people just post those beautiful, bright, and let's be honest, the Weather Channel's been posting way too many of them as well, these crazy, colorful snowfall maps. And when people see the snowfall line move north, they think the whole storm's going that way. But the problem is that what that did is it brought the ice over us. It brought the heavy ice and precipitation. It didn't move the whole system out of here. It just shifted what was going to fall. So I agree with you. It's not missing us. It's just that we've gone from, nice fluffy snow for parts of the Carolinas to this miserable cold rain. Now, let's talk about freezing rain, because that's been kind of the hot topic, at least in the Charlotte area today, about ice, because we haven't had a significant ice storm in, I think we look back today, James, like the last 2015, 16, right?
So, and then, of course, 02.
And 02. And 02 is like the infamous, if there was the Carolina Crusher yesterday, this would have been the Carolina Crippler, because it was by far the biggest ice storm to ever affect the state. I think 3.7 million Duke Power customers were without power for a minimum of 7 days. Knocked out more trees and power lines than Hugo. But the reason I bring this up is it's not a fair comparison, because I was actually, ironically, in town looking for an apartment for a new job I got here at WCNC back in 2002. I didn't start till January of 2003, but I was in a hotel across from our station. I was excited, Tim. I just came from New Orleans. I hadn't forecast winter weather forever. I'm like, there's an ice storm coming, and I'm all excited. I'm in my hotel room. My assistant news director at the time, Anzio Williams, now is a bigwig in NBC. I think he's up in Philly. Calls me, hey, come over. It's crazy over here, but there's a lot going on. We'll talk, and I'll show you around. And I come over, and people are like, do you have power at your hotel? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. What are you talking about? And they're all like, we need to take a shower, because many of them hadn't had power for a couple of days. And it was crazy. It was just one of those storms. But what was interesting, it was the first couple days of December, which is just a week basically after Thanksgiving. There were leaves on the trees. Even the video we had today, our video B-roll, had leaves on the ground. So there was a lot of surface area for the ice to stick to, and it caused massive tree damage. But the roads were completely fine, because the ground was so warm that the freezing rain never accumulated on the ground, just the trees and power lines. You couldn't get around because the trees were blocking the road, but the roads themselves were ice-free. But converse that with this one, Tim. The air is so cold, the ground is so cold, there's no leaves on the trees. Literally everything could get coated with ice with this one. So in some cases, this might be worse from a travel standpoint than that storm, and it could be equally as bad for power. Though I don't know. I mean, it's been, 23 years? Most of the power lines are buried. There's more people here. It's kind of weird. It's kind of hard to forecast power outages. I wish it was easier. I know the power companies have ways to do it, but for us, it's like it's hard to pinpoint and know what kind of power outages we're going to have.
I think the maximum, or about the highest amounts for that one was about 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch of ice, right?
Yep.
So
Could
huge. That happen in this storm? I hate to say it, but I think it's possible. I hope it doesn't happen. But I think wherever that bullseye might be, and that's still up for debate, I think it's possible that you could get upwards of, over half an inch of ice. And that's when you start to have those impacts. And so that's kind of the serious nature of the storm that we still got to watch for. But to underscore your point before, of people not really taking it seriously, it's like, you're not going out to dinner on Sunday. Like, no one is doing that. These are these are real life things that people are maybe not locked into their brain right now, but like
Yeah.
you're not going around the area to do things like that. Like the restaurant's probably closed.
Yeah.
And with good reason. Like those are the real things that are happening on Sunday.
Oh, and to put that in perspective, Winterfest was going to happen this weekend up in Blowing Rock. And ironically, Winterfest has been canceled this week and postponed to next week, all the activities, because of a winter storm. And a lot of people
Because
were.
of winter.
I saw the post, and a lot of people in the mountains were commenting. But if you know anything about Winterfest, it's really when a lot of people from down here, the flatlands, travel up to the mountains to enjoy winter. And so it's really for those people that they're canceling it, not the people that are in the mountains. They can deal with it. For us traveling back and forth, it probably would have been incredibly dangerous traveling from Greensboro and from Charlotte and from Raleigh to go to Blowing Rock for Winterfest. And I love it too because I have to work this weekend now and I can't enjoy Winterfest. So maybe next weekend I'll be able to get up there and enjoy it.
Right.
So yeah, it could be really interesting to see how the mountains react to this because they might actually get less. And if you look at the Blowing Rock image right now, I'm looking at the camera. James punched it up there. Looks cold, but it looks dry too, and there's not much snow on the ground. Looks beautiful.
Cold
though.
and dry for now, and it'll be looking a lot different by Saturday and then into Sunday as well. So it's going to be a whole new world. We've already talked a lot about the ice. We still have to talk a lot more, I think, about the lingering, and that's kind of like the next step of this thing. I'm still not confident how cold it's going to get next week, but whatever it is, that impact is going to be huge. And that's kind of the other shoe that has to drop is once the storm's over, you got to deal with people being cold and in dark and trying to stay warm and all that sort of thing. So we have a lot to talk about.
So we're going to talk a lot more about that. We're going to take our first break here, everybody. Stick around. We're going to come back, talk more about the winter storm. We are taking questions coming up in the second half hour. So if you have them, 704-329-3600. We'd love to get those answered for you later in the show. But right now, we're going to take a 2-minute break. Stick around. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back. You're taking a live look at Blowing Rock right now. We were just talking before the break about that Winterfest had their festivities postponed. They have a beer garden, a polar plunge, chili cook-off, all kinds of cool activities that were supposed to be taking place Saturday. They have postponed them to next weekend because of the winter storm, and I think it's a good call because a lot of people travel up there. It is a huge event for the mountains, their biggest wintertime event outside of ski weekend, so that's good news. I also was worried because a lot of people were going to go up there and get stuck and not be able to get back home, which could have happened for sure. Tim, with this setup. So, Tim, I mean, we're starting to get some of the questions rolling in, and we're starting to transition to this freezing rain, ice kind of sleet setup right now. And I want to go back to yesterday because I posted this graphic yesterday And I had 3 tracks. The first track was an all-snow track, and even yesterday I was like, this doesn't look very likely, least likely. I had track number 2, which was kind of what we were thinking yesterday. I thought maybe snow to sleet to ice, probably some kind of weird sandwich of all of those. But, a mix with some snow still Interstate 40 north up towards you. And then track 3 was like the crippling ice storm potential. And unfortunately, things have certainly trended towards number 3. What I do find interesting, and I'm glad you mentioned this earlier before the break, we were comparing 2002. And you made a good point. That was like 3/4 of an inch to an inch of ice, which is insane. I went back and looked, and the coldest temperatures we had during that were like in the upper 20s. You made a point about how some of the surface temperatures we're seeing, even with this icy shift north, the surface temperatures still are like you said, upper teens, low 20s. That's a pretty dramatic difference from 2002. And why, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, that could be freezing rain, but you mentioned it. That's cold enough that we could refreeze that rain to sleet. And the difference between sleet and freezing rain is pretty stark. Sleet is horrible on the roads. It doesn't melt very easy. It sticks to the roads more than it does the grass, honestly. But it doesn't stick to power lines and trees. So as devastating as a crippling ice storm could be, if it's all sleet, Tim, this is like a rare thing. We're rooting for sleet. Normally, snow lovers are saying sleet ruins everything. I know that's one of your favorite sayings, and I agree with it. But in this case, I'm kind of rooting for sleet.
Yes. If you had to pick one, I think it's way preferable to do that. Now, if you get 2 to 3 inches of sleet, I mean, oh my goodness, that's going to be on the ground until March, and we'll deal with that somehow. But I mean, really, that's hard to get rid of because it's the difference between melting, shaved ice versus cubed ice or something. It's much harder to melt. But yes, that is, I don't know. Don't you think when we look at just conceptually, and if we're kind of ignoring what the models are saying for right now, I don't ever love the model output of sleet versus freeze rain, or I should say I don't always trust it necessarily because I think it's a really hard thing for them to assign. Yeah. And if you're just conceptually looking at like Carolina weather, we talk about the wedge and the cold air dam wedge for us, and this is a cold air damming storm. Typically, right around that southern edge of the wedge would be where you get your worst ice storm, to me. And then in the heart of it, you might, in this case, if you're really cold, that might be where you see more of the sleet. So for my area, sleet might be preferred for a good chunk of the time from like Saturday night until Sunday afternoon, and then maybe we finish off with ice. For your area, you're closer to that southern edge of the wedge. You might be in more of line of that ice storm criteria, but it could even be, Brad, in the upstate of South Carolina if the wedge is undermodeled a little bit. So all of those are still variables in play.
Yeah, and what Tim's talking about, the wedge, cold air damming, we talk a lot about that. It is by far the least, I would say, least, I don't know how to actually word this, but it's the most poorly modeled phenomenon we get here in the Carolinas. It's usually stronger than expected. It lasts longer than expected. And so that's why when you start looking at model data, you can't really, you got to almost experience winds out in these situations, because having seen enough of these, you kind of learn, like the model gives you a hint, but you got to kind of remember what these storms tend to do. And that's why I totally agree with you. When we look at the model outputs, all these pretty colors and maps that everybody's posting all over social media, those are just the model output. But when you dig into like the math and the thermodynamics of the model, sometimes it conflicts with what those maps are saying. And I was looking at the European model, for instance. It shows all this ice, but when you look at the sounding, the forecast sounding from the same model, it looks like sleet. Mm-hmm. It's a sleet sounding. It's not a freezing rain sounding. But the map it's putting out is showing ice. So there's something weird going on there where the maps don't match what the thermal profile of the atmosphere is showing.
And it's also, you might have noticed too, Brad, I can pop this up because I'll show you something I don't agree with the Euro, but you give me a second to find it. We've got like 1,000 graphics going on here and doing hits all day, so I'm trying to find where it is. All right, so here's the European computer model, and I definitely buy that we're getting a ton of mixed precipitation. Yeah. We're going to get some sleet, we're going to get a whole lot of ice, and someone's going to get an ice storm. What I don't agree with is that it takes this big, healthy, strong long wedge of cold air, and then it just says, poof, it's going to go away. Like I don't think it's going to weaken. I don't think that wedge is going to weaken. Like I don't think you're going to get cold rain in Charlotte ever.
No.
In my opinion, on Sunday.
Well, and Tim too.
And then there's some weird thing with snow on the back. Yeah.
It's so. I'm glad you brought that up because when you look at right there, what you can't see off to the right, the low is past us. The flow is coming back out of the northwest. How is the wedge getting eroded on the backside? I mean. You think colder air would be filtering in, right? It's like it doesn't make. You're right. There's no. Where's the?
And we can talk about those differences if people want to. One thing I did do, Brad, at least with the GFS models, I put 2 lines on here.
Ooh.
The yellow one is the 850 line.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the 32-degree line above our heads, everybody. And then the purple line is that surface temperature at 32.
Yeah.
So you see here the reason why you're not getting a nice snowfall on Sunday in the Carolinas is because the air is way too warm above our heads, and probably even warmer that at a different level. That was just the only one I was able to plot. But that's the problem here. It's just going to be too warm above our heads to get a nice snowfall, but plenty cold enough to get a bad ice event.
Yeah, it's kind of weird, like you said. There's a lot of conflicting information in the guidance, Tim. I think that's what we're both kind of alluding to.
Yeah, that's right.
And so I think that's what it's making us kind of pause a little bit. And let's be honest, guys, it's Wednesday. We're still like 3 days away from this actually happening. I think that gets lost in translation sometimes is, a lot can happen. A lot happened in the past 24 hours. What if that happens every day for the next 3 days, Tim? It's going to be like we're going to be all over the place. So that's a possibility.
Yeah. And still, like as complicated as the forecast is, and boy, we're going to try and figure out all these details, to me, like the same message is, you should be prepared to be stuck at home for a couple of days, and you might lose power.
100%.
That's the whole forecast.
All right, stick around. We got to take one more break, but we're not going away. We're going to be sticking around. We're going to answer your questions that we've gotten in. You see the number right below my head there, 704-329-3600. We'd love to answer your questions. Fire away. We'd love to answer them. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in 2 minutes and try to answer as many as we can. All right, welcome back. We're still talking winter storm this weekend with Chief Meteorologist Tim Buckley at FMY, Chief Meteorologist Brad Panovich here in Charlotte. As of right now, Tim and I are kind of in general agreement on an icy mess for most of the Carolinas. It's going to be a sleet, freezing rain mixture of some kind. There's still uncertainty, folks. It's only Wednesday. We'll try to answer as many questions as we can for you tonight. That's kind of a look at what we're looking at. Tim broke it down even further for thicker ice, which I agree with for parts of our area. I really quickly, James, could you punch up my laptop real quickly? And I'll ask Tim about this before we get to your questions. Tim, you made a good point about, we got a lot of questions yesterday about, it's going to miss us or move here or whatever. I wanted to bring this graphic back up because this is the chance of moderate winter storm impacts. Moderate impacts, not minor, not just winter weather areas, moderate impacts from 1 a.m. Saturday till 1 a.m. Monday. And if you look carefully, it might be hard to see. I'll zoom in. Charlotte has a 90% chance of that happening. And Tim, you're lucky. You have a 95% chance of that happening up in your area.
Oh, boy.
So that just kind of shows you, I think people think it's missing us or it's changing. The impacts really aren't changing. What's causing the impacts, I think, are the big change. It's gone from a little bit of snow, maybe more snow in a few spots, to really ice. But we really want to emphasize the fact that this is still going to be a very impactful storm for our area. So I just wanted to pass that along because I did think that was stunning because the chances of high impacts or moderate impacts have actually increased, not decreased, even with our changes overnight. So Tim, let's get right to our first question. James is going to punch them up. Hopefully you'll be able to see them as well, and we'll try to hit this all together. So why don't you take the first one, Tim? Go ahead and hit this one.
All right, so the question is from somebody. Are areas that lost power for several days during Hurricane Helene likely to lose power this time as well? That's a great question. Yep. These are mostly, of course, our mountain community friends. To me, it looks like there, of course, is that chance that you could lose power pretty much anywhere in the Carolinas with this storm. But I would think that for the mountains, I'd mostly be concerned with, the south-facing parts, southern Appalachians, not so much like the Boone and Blowing Rock areas per se, but maybe more so like think about Asheville and the surrounding hills and Brevard and those areas. That might be where you are able to, or unfortunately could see some icing and maybe especially in that upstate South Carolina area too, around Greenville, Spartanburg, and those mountains. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say that I think the upstate, because one of the hidden things about Helene we forget about was all the wind damage in the upstate of South Carolina as Helene passed over, and they lost power for a week down in like Greenville, Spartanburg, and those areas. That might be an area that gets some significant ice as well. You brought up a good point. There's always those favored ice locations, Upper Caldwell, Burke County, McDowell County, Rutherford County, Wilkes County, the Yadkin Valley. There's some hidden spots up there where the cold air kind of sits, and you get a little bit of upslope, which helps cool it as well. So those areas in particular, I would watch carefully. And one of the interesting things about freezing rain is sometimes lighter freezing rain causes bigger issues than heavy freezing rain.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is rate. When you get big raindrops or heavy rain, it can't freeze because it's so heavy it runs off. We talked a little about this yesterday. Freezing drizzle or mist over a long period of time actually accumulates much quicker on elevated surfaces and can cause big time problems. The other thing about freezing rain, and this is one of my favorite science things, is the latent heat release. So freezing rain is a self-limiting process. What does that mean? Well, think about how you boil water, right? What do you do to boil water? You add heat to it, right? If you want to freeze water, you got to take heat out of the water. Well, when you take heat out of the water, which is the process of freezing, where does that heat go? It goes into the atmosphere. So in freezing rain, when freezing rain is freezing, it is actually slowly trying to warm up the atmosphere unless you have a constant supply of more cold air, which we do in this case. It's a high pressure over New England that continues to push it down. This also is something that relates to the frost and freeze season. When farmers spray their crops with water to get ice, this is what they're doing. They're releasing heat from the water to go into the plant to keep it from freezing. They're freezing the water and not the plant. So, Tim, that's always an interesting science part of freezing rain. We get things called barrier jets and anchor highs that supply the cold air, but there's a lot of other things going on in the atmosphere that make freezing rain kind of very unique.
Yeah, it's super interesting, and that plays a big role in a lot of our events when you're concerned or wondering, is it going to be cold enough to make that ice? And how long is it going to last? A lot of those freezing rain events, most of the ones that I can remember, Brad, for our area, we have an air temperature of like 28, 29, 30 degrees. Yep. And so that can really cut it off or shut it off toward the end. But like we were saying before, it's really going to be cold. We'll be in the low 20s, mid 20s at best. And so it really is going to be one of those things where that's probably not going to save you.
No.
But also, like you were saying, that high pressure constantly giving us that cold air, that's the thing we've been lacking with so many of these winter setups, is that cold air source. And now we have it, and I wish we didn't, because that's going to keep that ice as a possibility throughout the entire event.
Yeah, I wish it was like a transient high, which was moving away. And unfortunately, it looks like that cold air in eastern Canada and New England's just sitting there for a while. All right, so let's go to our next question. This is says, "Hi, Brad." So I guess it's directed towards me, but we'll try to both answer this. Unfortunately, I'm a healthcare worker, and I'll have to make it to Gastonia for work Sunday morning. Do you know if there's a plan on salting the roads? I'm debating avoiding the highway. These drivers are crazy. No lies there. But I'm worried back roads won't be taken care of either. Wow. This is actually a pretty good question. And it's always a tough one, Tim, because I don't know what DOT's doing in this situation. I know they're probably going to try to pre-treat roads. And in this case, they're probably going to try to salt the roads. While I do think the main roads are treated better, I like driving on the back roads better because it's slower speeds and less elevated roadways than the interstates.
Yeah.
So when there's a situation like this, even I drive home on back roads because I feel like I can control that situation a little better, even if they're covered with snow or ice.
It's a good question, and it we can never totally answer this for you. This is all based on your comfort and your experience with these type of things. But I tend to agree with you. One of the things I like also, if you have to drive in a really horrible winter situation, if you're on a back road, highways are limited access. And so if you get stuck and you're a couple miles away from an exit, that's not a great situation.
Yes.
If you're on a back road, there might be a side street, there might be someone that lives there. You might be able to find help. And so those are other things to consider. For me, we don't get it all the time, but we've had plenty of storms where I've had to drive to and from work in bad snow or bad ice. I try and think of my whole route and think about avoiding hills, avoiding sharp turns, like all of those kind of things. There are probably a couple ways you can get to where you're trying to go. Trying to avoid a lot of those things as best you can is going to put yourself in the best situation to succeed. And then just taking it slow and not making a lot of sudden movements. Someone said, imagine there's a big pitcher of sweet tea in the passenger seat, and you're trying not to spill it.
Yes.
Right? So you're just going to go very smooth and steady.
Yeah, herky-jerky motions, whether braking, steering, accelerating, all that stuff's bad.
Yeah.
On ice. You want to go slow as possible. Yeah, it's funny, Tim. I was telling one of our EPs today that same thing. She was worried about getting, and I said, I would take the route with the least amount of hills, as you mentioned, and the least amount of elevated road surfaces. If you have to go 10 miles an hour the whole way, that's great, but at least it's relatively safe. But yeah, traveling's always tough. You're like me, Tim. You grew up in the north. I've never stayed at the station in 23 years for a winter storm or got in a hotel. I always go home. Now, does it take me the normal 15 minutes? No. Sometimes it takes me a lot longer, but I feel comfortable going home if I know the route and I'm very steady. I actually like it in winter weather because usually nobody's on the road, so I feel like I'm good to go. I worry about other drivers more than myself, but ice is one of those things sometimes. Man, four-wheel drive, truck, it doesn't matter. I always laugh when people say I have four-wheel drive. Well, you have four-wheel skidding now as well. That's all you have because ice doesn't really care. It's great in the snow to have four-wheel drive, but on ice it really honestly doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So our next question here is, what would you expect road conditions to be like mid to late next week? And Tim, this is a great question because you hinted at this. Next week, there's a whole second part of this system which isn't directly related to the precipitation, but boy, the Arctic blast next week is no joke. This could be the coldest year we've seen in many years as well. Yeah,
I'm worried about, a lot of us, maybe not everybody, but some people are going to have low temperatures get into the single digits on Tuesday morning. And that's the air temperature. And that happens. The last time I remember it happening significantly was that Christmas Eve a couple of years ago. And we had a lot of frozen pipes and a lot of big problems. And I think we'll have that this time as well. So the question is, what about the road conditions? Well, if you have accumulating sleet and accumulating ice and it's on the road, you're needing to rely on the sunlight, mostly to melt that away, because we're not going to be very much above freezing into next week. And the ground temperatures, I don't think, are going to help you out all that much either. So that's going to be a bit of an issue. I think probably through at least Wednesday, if not beyond, especially on the shady side streets.
Yeah, I was just going to say, those neighborhood streets with trees and shade, there might be parts of your neighborhood that don't thaw out until late week because it's so cold. So, yeah, there could be lingering issues for a while. And that's also why it's going to be hard for the DOT crews. You know, they like to use salt when it's kind of within 5 or 10 degrees of freezing. Some of these nights in the single digits and teens, regular good old-fashioned salt doesn't really do much at those kind of temperatures. You need some sodium chloride out there to help out, and I don't know if they have a lot of that. So we're going to take a quick break, everybody. We'll come back and answer some more of your questions. If you didn't get one in, you still have time, 704-329-3600. We'll try to answer them here coming up in the next couple of minutes. But stick around. We got to take another break. All right, welcome back. We're taking your questions about the winter storm here on a Wednesday evening. We're still about 72 hour-ish away. Saturday night this time. We'll probably be in the thick of it. Tim Buckley joins me as well. Got a great question here, Tim, and this will probably apply to you as well. It's directed towards me, but I'll direct it towards you. Brad, when are you putting out your maps? That's a great question because I am thinking about tonight at 11. If I don't do it tonight, Tim, it probably will be first thing tomorrow morning.
Gotcha. Yeah, it's always a fun question to ask, you know, because people always want to know, and I totally get that. One of the questions we were answering last night on air was, what's the deal with the Apple Weather app? And we can get into that if you want to. But truly, right now, I'm not even joking, right now it's still forecasting over 20 inches of snow.
I just saw somebody texted me that it said in Charlotte 17 to 18 inches of snow. I'm like, today?
Amazing.
What is going on with that app?
Yeah. To answer that question, I usually do 48 hours out as kind of a minimum. So I would probably have mine out tomorrow, but not tonight for me, I don't think.
Yeah, I really do want to get that Hurricane Hunter data in there. And part of me says it might be too close for 11. And I honestly, Tim, I'd probably be comfortable putting out some type of ice map, but I'm not comfortable with a snow map yet. So I think that's the catch. Because remember, folks,
snow's tougher.
Yeah, full transparency. Even though sleet is a form of ice, it's measured like snow, so it would go into the snow total. So when we're forecasting snow, that's snow and sleet accumulation. Ice is just strictly the ice that sticks to stuff. So speaking of that, I just want to quickly show this just for full transparency, Tim. This is the blend of models look for the Carolinas, just to give you an idea. This is not one model. This is the national blend of models. So it takes every single model. It's weighted by forecasters, and it uses what's called the flat accumulation, which is the FRAM model. That's a fancy term for freezing rain allowing model. So this actually has a lot of human tweaks to it and blending. And if you look carefully, Tim, that's kind of scary, because I think every square inch of North Carolina and most of upper state South Carolina is around 0.4 to 0.5 of an inch ice. That's pretty significant.
It'd be a widespread disaster. There's no doubt about that. I have some thoughts about it. I don't know if it's going to be that icy in Central Virginia.
Yeah, that seems a little weird
all of
up
those
there.
things go into it. I would think maybe that it probably needs to be, unfortunately, maybe a little higher in a narrower area and then lower over a broader area. But like you said, it's a blend. And like we also said, it's 3 days away.
It's broad brushing everything, basically, is what it's doing. It's just like, all right, there's ice everywhere.
Is now a good time to give Brad his gift? I got Brad, the only brand of ice melt I trust is Brad's Ice Melt.
How much do I owe you for that?
Brad's Premium Ice Melt.
Yeah. So that's why I'm driving home. I'll be out in my hood sprinkling in front of my car as I drive. So Tim, we had a question, and James briefly brought it up there, and you brought it up as well. So, boy, I don't know if we have enough time for this, but why are there so many discrepancy between weather apps? And I think this question pertains to the national and stock app, not our station apps, which are our forecast or local apps, but kind of the national apps, the Google Weather, MSN Weather, Apple Weather, all of those. I dove into this a little bit. I know you did yesterday as well, but maybe you start off. Why are there such crazy forecasts, especially for snow for some reason, from these apps?
Well, number one, neither Brad nor I know the code. We didn't make those. We don't work for them. So that's number one. So we don't know how they're going through it. But truly, I mean, I think the gist of it is it's scrubbing computer model data, and probably 362 days of the year, it's pretty good for most things, whether it be temperatures or even rain chances. It's bad for summer thunderstorms because we're bad at predicting where those exactly are. It's really bad for snowfall because computer models are not good at identifying. And we have our struggles too, don't we? Yeah. Where's the snow going to be heaviest? And then moreover, how's that snow going to stack up on the ground? And right now, for some reason, in that coding that's in those apps, it just takes everything that's falling this weekend and make it snow. And we've just spent 45 minutes showing you why it's not going to fall as snow, unfortunately, over a big chunk of the Carolinas. And there must be something in their code that's not seeing that level of the atmosphere correctly.
Yeah, and I think the tell on that, Tim, is that you never see in the app, like, there's going to be 4 to 5 inches of snow, half inch of sleet, quarter inch of ice. It always just says snow. So to me,
that's right.
I agree with you 100%. What it's doing, and this is, peel back the curtain, what I think, and I'm almost 99% sure of this, as you mentioned, I think it takes all the precip, it looks for 32 degrees anywhere in the profile, and it converts it all to snow at a 10-to-1 ratio. It's pretty much what it does.
Yeah.
So it took that, Tim showed you like that 1.7 inches of rain or whatever, the 1.5, right there, the 1.5 liquid equivalent. It's basically taking that and saying that's going to be 15 inches of snow. That's what it's doing. It's not accounting for mixing, melting, compaction, P-types, any of that. So I think that's what's happening. And Apple, for whatever reason, it just has a really bad track record of doing that for almost no reason. It's really weird.
And the app doesn't have to see people at the grocery store the next day and explain why, hey, you said it was going to be 20 inches. I never said 20 inches. I'm saying wait. I'm saying you got to give me more time, and then I'll tell you it'll snow 1 to 2 inches in Greensboro instead of 20.
People harass Tim Cook. They're like, Jim Cook, my forecast sucks. So the next question we got is a Charlotte-centric one, but you could probably answer this for your area as well, Tim. What is the probability of Charlotte-Mecklenburg Office of Emergency Management opening shelters across Charlotte? And do you expect shelters needed through all of Charlotte? So it's funny you say that. I'm actually going to be in a briefing with them tomorrow. I help our local emergency management office. I'll give them a briefing on the weather. I'll kind of find out. My gut tells me they won't do that unless there's massive power outages where people need warming shelters. We do have shelters open for the unhoused right now in Charlotte because it's so cold. But if there is widespread power outages, I do think like fire stations and some shelters will open that have generators or heat to help people, get out of their home and have a warm place to go. I don't know what you've heard up in the Triad area, but I think that would be like the trigger if there's a massive power outage.
Yeah, I think they're still thinking those plans over, and certainly that'll be a consideration. But, if that were to be the case, you still got to get there, and you still got to drive yourself to get to those shelters. So we've been kind of given some tips on our newscasts of, if you're stuck at home and you can't get on the roads and you don't have heat, like what are your best options to kind of keep yourself home warmer throughout that event? And there are limited options. You don't have too many sources of heat, but even simple things like keeping everybody in the same room and applying sheeting to the windows and all these kind of things that can kind of help you out in a pinch if you need to for a couple days.
Yeah, and I think that's a key part is also once it gets cold and the power goes out, try to retain that heat in your house as much as possible. Tim, this one's for you. I'll let you take this one away.
Well, we just kind of were talking about this, weren't we? Best way to keep the kiddos warm without a generator. Limited options, but you might have a heat source. I know for my house, I have a gas fireplace. It still works when the power's out, and so that's something you might consider, obviously. But apart from that, what could you do? You can make sure today and tomorrow and the next day, feel around the windows and the doors, see if there's cold air getting through. You can kind of take care of that, and it doesn't need to be a fancy fix that works every day of the year. You could simply tape that up or put a blanket on the. You can do that sort of impromptu insulation now if you'd like to, or you could do it over the weekend. But even just like huddling people, someone brought up the silly idea, especially with the kiddos. Do you have a tent? Do you go camping ever? Well, why don't you set up the tent in the living room?
Yeah.
That's going to keep everybody warmer, and the kids can have a little sleep over there. You can build little forts like with blankets and cushions. All of those things will help. Now, you're going to have to bundle up. It might get down to the 50s in the house or worse, but that's something you can do.
Yeah, and I think a good point, and I bring this up all the time, the difference between being uncomfortable and being dangerous are pretty different. It might not be great. It might be chilly in your house, but
that's right.
Like you said, if it's in the 50s, I think most people would say that's pretty cold in my house, but that's survivable. You can get through that with clothing, and you'd be surprised. Houses retain heat if you keep them sealed up pretty well because you're generating heat and things in your house are generating heat. You just got to trap it. It's like wearing a jacket, right? Jackets do a great job when they trap the heat in your body. Trap that stuff in your house. That's probably the best thing you could do. Our next question is a good one because we were joking about this earlier, Tim. Do we need to store water in our tub? And the reason we were joking about this, the stores here are like sold out of bottled water. And I was like, why are people buying bottled water? The snow and ice is not going to affect the water supply unless you have a well that needs a pump that's powered by electricity to get it up. City water supplies are going to be fine. Your faucet will still work. In fact, you probably want to drip it and keep it running during this cold snap, but you're going to have plenty of water. That's not going to be the issue.
The only thing, I think that's right. The only thing I was thinking, and this will be something we talk about, I guess, when it comes to if you lose power in the house.
Yeah.
And if it gets down to 8 degrees or whatever, boy, does that increase your chance of having frozen pipes.
Yep.
So what you might want to consider is actually shutting off the water and leaving those faucets open to kind of drain the pipes. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
So that's something that you might consider if you're worried about those pipes a little bit. And hopefully it doesn't get to that point for folks, but that might be somewhat of a concern.
Yeah, usually water's not a big issue here, so I think probably I'd be okay with the water. And the other thing is, you just fill up water bottles and jugs at your house. You don't need to go to the store and buy it. The faucet works right now. You could start filling up bottles now and save it for the weekend. There's no need to go buy bottled water. Not that your water bill is free, but you pretty much have free water at your house.
You know what it is? It's psychology, right?
Yeah.
As human beings, we feel better when we're doing something, and the act of going and I'm going and doing this and I'm going and buying that's going to make you feel a little bit better. Some of those things you really need to buy, but maybe the water might not be one of those.
Yeah, and all the toilet paper, because we know you're probably cold air makes you go to the bathroom all the time, Tim, right? All right, this is the next question.
We saw that during COVID.
Yeah, that was weird. So this one's for me. What's the closest place I could drive from Charlotte on Friday to avoid ice or snow? Wow, that's I'd actually probably recommend south, not north.
Yeah.
I was thinking today, because someone was coming up from Florida, and they asked, when would it get bad as I'm coming to Charlotte? And I was thinking like Columbia, like the Midlands of South Carolina might be the borderline, or maybe coastal South Carolina, Charleston. I would maybe go to Charleston, maybe down there. I think Myrtle Beach might be close, but the nice thing about the ocean this time of year, it's still warm enough to keep the immediate coast a little bit warmer. And so I think I would head south or southeast, not go north, northwest, or northeast.
What's wild is in some of those computer model runs, they actually warm it up a lot at the end of the storm on those. So we'll see if that happens. But I agree with Charleston. Good choice.
Yeah, that would be a good one. It's easy. It's all interstate, too, by the way. All right, so we're running out of time, everybody, but don't go anywhere. We're going to keep the weather coverage rolling here on WCNC Plus and WFMY Plus, and we'll be doing this again every night this week, and you'll probably get sick of seeing us, but we'll keep you informed on this winter storm as we get closer to the weekend. See you later.